Hello everyone, Joseph Schooland here with Populi. Glad you're here to learn about rubrics. We're going to jump right into it. A few housekeeping things. If you've been here before, you know the drill, but just in case, I think there's two places that you guys can put information. One is in a little chat room and the other is in a Q&A box. Please put all questions in the Q&A box because I can pull that up and have it on my other screen right where I can see it and see those coming through. If the question that pops up pertains to what we're talking about, I'll try and answer it if it goes with the flow. If it's a little bit off, or maybe we already just covered that and we're not going to go backwards, then I might save it to the end, or you can just hold your questions to the end, whatever. But use that Q&A box to ask those questions. And don't get distracted by the chat room. Okay, that is it. I think that's all we need for housekeeping. I'm going to go ahead and kill my video and share my screen. Of course, at any time you can use that Q&A box to let me know if you're not hearing me or if you need help. All right, let's go ahead and log in. This training today is primarily for academic admin types, registrars. It could also apply to faculty. Before we begin, I'm going to do my traditional, this is how you get help. Some of you might be already familiar with Populi and you're comfortable with it and you don't need that. But some of you, this might be new and you're kind of freaked out and this is all new information and it feels like you're drinking from a fire hose. So I just want to assure you that you don't need to download every little piece of information I say today. You don't need to memorize it all. You can take notes if you want, you can learn stuff, but you'll be able to find help later on. And this is how. In the top right, we've got a little help button. Just click on that. If you're the type who likes to research on your own, you can search the knowledge base. We love helping out. We have a great support team. We want that to be probably, we want our product to be really good, but we also want our support to be really good. So we take pride in that. We have both phone and email support for all faculty and staff. And then we have email only support for students. Our hours are Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific time, excluding holidays. And we'd love for you to reach out. So even if you are the type who likes to research on your own, don't go banging your head against the wall for 2 hours, not being able to find the answer. Please reach out to us. Reach out to us as quickly as you want. Open a support request. This lets you type out your request, kind of like an email, I guess. And this is particularly helpful if you have some real specifics to give us. Let's say you could type out, I'm working on this rubric and give the name. And when I try and use it to give this student, give the name of the student, this grade, maybe even the number grade you're trying to give, it just won't save, or this will happen, or this isn't calculating right, or whatever. In this course, if you can give those specifics and spell it out, that's so helpful to our support team because then they can actually look at your Populi and dig into it and maybe even hand it over to a developer if maybe you uncovered a bug that needs to be fixed by our development team. If you're not really sure, you don't really have those specifics, you're kind of figuring out your question, you want to just talk it through, give us a call, 877, the number 4 and the word Populi, 877-4-POPULI. And you can find that number on our website and in the knowledge base. And then finally, if it's even more nuanced than that, you are thinking about starting to use admissions, but you've never really looked into it before. You can go to our YouTube channel and dig into some of those admissions trainings that are recorded there. Or you could reach out to one of our account managers. I'm one, Joseph Schooland. Maybe I work with you, your school. We also have Nick Holloway. Maybe he's the one who works with your school. If you don't know who it is, you can reach out to our support team and ask them, or ask your main Populi person at your school. And they'll be able to connect you up with your account manager, and they'll be able to schedule a training webinar for you. It would just be you and them. You get to talk. You're not on mute like you are right now. And you get to talk about your specific situation and how it would look like maybe setting up admissions for your school. Those kind of training webinars can be helpful. If you want to view requests that you've opened up, you can do that here. If you want to make a feature request, you can do that here. There's a lot of feature requests in there. You might notice that. I do assure you we look at every single one and we do our best to try and decide what we're going to be working on each week. We actually release our release notes every single week. So we do work on stuff every week. And we have to kind of decide, some from the voting and stuff in the feature request form, and some from just, I don't know what the major accrediting bodies are requiring, what different government organizations are requiring, what's just what the industry looks like they're doing. We're kind of weighing different things to decide what we're working on, but we do look at all the stuff that's in there. If you want to interact with other clients, you can do that here at the user forum. I want to show you a couple articles in this knowledge base, and then we'll dig in. One is always keep an eye on these promoted articles. You probably already have been, which is why you found this and signed up for this meeting. If you want to see all our tutorials, you can do that here. If you forgot that number I told you about, you can find that here, how to contact us. And in academics, under settings and general information, we do have a setting up rubrics article. That would be a handy one to dig into. That's academics, under settings and general information about academics, setting up rubrics. And then we also have one on the courses side, under courses and assignments, using rubrics in your courses. Another handy article. And I believe both these will come up if you just search for rubrics. I think they'll be at the top of the list. So you can find those later if you need them. All right, that is how to find help. Let's jump in. First off, there's two different types of rubrics in Populi. One is at the academic level, at the global level. And this is something only the academic admin has access to. And just to start from very bare bones from the very beginning, rubrics are something that will help you grade assignments in a more orderly fashion. So it's something built into Populi that faculty can follow. And it's not just the faculty thinking up a number or keeping track of how they decide that number outside of Populi. It can all be done in Populi. And one is, we can do one at a global level, and then faculty can pull that into their courses. Or you can just kind of create them in a one-off way in each course. There's a setting way down here at the bottom. Again, only academic admin have access to this, and that is allow faculty to create rubric criteria, yes or no. So if you want to keep this more restrained to just only global criteria are allowed, and the faculty can pull those into their own rubrics as they build them. Or if you want to go ahead and allow them to create criteria on the fly, this is what you decide, yes or no. So that's a setting you might want to pay attention to. Let's go ahead and jump into rubrics. I purposely deleted all my rubrics out of this test school so that we could set one up together. We'll start off just by clicking add a rubric, and we can give it a name and a description if we want. Not required, optional, but it might help. So I'm using this called composition. I'm thinking writing, things like that. How to evaluate thought, structure, presentation, and grammar of student writing. That's what I'm thinking this rubric's going to be for, and the kind of assignments I'm going to attach it to. So I'll go ahead and save. So now I've brought now to the composition rubric page, and then I can start building it out. Now Populi's warning me this rubric does not have any criteria yet. Criteria are kind of the heart, the structure of a rubric. In fact, let's go back. Essentially, courses that you set up in Populi will have assignments. You can grade assignments. And one thing that can aid you in grading those assignments are rubrics. So we just made a rubric right here. And the breakdown of how that rubric is graded is going to be criteria. And we have not made that yet. We'll jump in on that in just a sec. I want to hop back real quick. So now I've got this setup, composition. It's just in draft form, not published yet because I don't have the criteria. It's not fully set up and I haven't switched it to published. And if I wanted to add a new rubric, now all of a sudden I have this new option. I can again create a new rubric, or I can duplicate an existing rubric. By duplicating it, I'm essentially just making it, I search for a rubric, composition, bring it in, and then I'm going to have to give it a different name. And so I'm kind of starting with something I already built and tweaking it a little bit. I don't want to start all over from scratch. I want to do something similar to what I did before, and I'm just tweaking it. Sometimes you might be required to do this, especially if a rubric is already attached to students who have already been graded and so on. If you don't like the way you did it in the past, then you can make a new version without deleting that historic rubric. So that's the look you would get if you already had a rubric in here. Now let's drill back down to our composition. We could go in here to criteria and add criteria here, or we can go into our rubric and then add criteria on our rubric. So it's two different places here. If I ever need to edit this, I can. If I want to publish it here, I can. And I've got some other actions here. If I don't have this rubric attached anywhere, then I can delete it. Otherwise, that delete option will go away. Again, we're keeping it as historic. I'll have a retired option, but not a delete option any longer. Okay, so next step, building this out, let's add some criteria. And we've got some options using an existing criteria. So I'm just copying and pasting a criteria that I've already got. In fact, as I'm building out rubrics, I'm essentially going to be building this sort of criteria bank. And I can pull those into any rubric that I want. So I can share criteria across rubrics, or criterion, I guess would be the singular as we've correctly spelled here. I can also duplicate. Again, this is just taking what's already been there, but I want to tweak it. Or I can create new. I'm going to go ahead and create new. We're going to give this a name. I can also give this a description if I want. It is optional. And then down here, I've got certain levels. So I can name these levels something like, excellent, poor, pass, fail, good, bad, very good, fair, whatever you might call each level. And by default, we're going to require you to have at least two, to make kind of a pass fail, because one will be worth 100, one will be worth 0. If we add another level, then I can break it out. So now if I gave them this one, they'd get 100% of the points for this criterion. If I give them this one, they'd get 50, this one, and they'd get 0. And I could even continue to add more and more. And Populi will auto give me these numbers in the middle. Or I could bump it up a little bit. Maybe something like 90, 80, 70, and 0. If I want even more flexibility than that, I can choose this range. And what this does is it lets me choose not just the hard 100 if it's excellent, 67 if it's something else, 34 if it's something else, 0 if it's poor, but I can choose some range. So I could give them an excellent, that's an 82, or I could give them an excellent, that's a 96. And then they could see sort of how excellent they actually were, where they fell in that range. We're going to go ahead and fill this out a little bit. I'm going to make that 85. And another thing I can do that is optional is I can add a description. It might help the student understand where they're at. This one here, let's see. I'm going to make this with only 3. We'll do this one, 100 to 85. We'll do this one. The range is going to be 84 all the way down to 35. And we'll call this good. And I'll give it this description. Idea is an interaction presented with competence. And then finally, 34 down to 0 is going to be poor. And we'll call it this. Unclear thinking, poor organization of material, little to no interaction with sources, and or muddled writing. So students will be able to see these and understand why they got the score they got. I can also give this a weight. So how much of this rubric is this going to count for? And we'll say that this criterion is only 35%. I'm going to make a couple more. We have a little warning here, the total's got to equal 100, and I can edit that now, or I could add another one. Let's go ahead and add another one. And these I'm not going to spell out in as much detail as I did before. I'm not going to do each one because you probably get the idea. So we'll skip over the description. We'll keep the range. This one we'll do. One thing to note is that these numbers auto change every time you add or take away a level. So it's probably a good idea to do your levels first and then put in your numbers. And we'll call this very good. 89 all the way down to 60. We'll call this good. 59 down to 26. And we'll call this poor. 25 down to 0. And notice I've got a little helpful tally here. I've got a max of 65 now because I gave 35 to the other one. And we're going to give this one 35. Save. Notice how this one isn't as fleshed out. So the student's not going to have this text to kind of guide them or help them. They're just going to see the words excellent, very good, good, poor. And those have to imagine what that means. So if you really want it to be helpful, really spell it all the way out. And let's do the last one here. We'll call it citations. Leave the description alone. We'll keep the range there. And this one, we're just going to have 3. We'll call this one, we're just going to have 2. We're going to keep it real simple. We'll call this one good, as long as it's 100 to 50. And we'll do poor for 50 and lower. And this is going to be my last criterion for this rubric, and I've got a 30% left. I'll just go ahead and take all that 30%, hit save. Notice how that little warning went away. I can still add more criterion, but I'm going to have to figure out my weighting a little bit. Now that I've built this out, I can edit these as I need to. I can delete them as I need to, and I can grab these and move them around if I want. If I want the student to see them in a little bit different order. This still is not published, so I'm going to go ahead and publish it. There we go. We created a global rubric, and now any course can pull this in and start using it by adding it to an assignment. Let's go back here. I just want to show you, remember how I said you're going to kind of get this criteria bank? So notice how everything I've created is going to land in my criteria bank. I can edit these here. It doesn't make sense to have the weights portion of it though, because, well, this isn't actually part of a rubric here. I'm just editing the criterion alone. I also have a warning here saying this criterion is used in a rubric. If you edit it here, it's going to change it everywhere else. So be careful before you start editing those things. I can retire it here if I don't want to use it anymore. And I can add another criterion. Create new one, duplicate. So these, if I create them here, they're just kind of floating. They're not attached to anything, but I can pull them into rubrics later by, instead of choosing the instead of choosing the create new, I would just use an existing, and I'd be able to pull in whatever's there. I'd have to search for it and pull it in. I might not be able to search for anything because I've got all 3 used up in this rubric already. So there you go. Notice how I can now retire this now that it's published. I can still delete it because it's not attached anywhere. I can duplicate if I want to make another one similar. Good, I think we're pretty thorough on the global side of things. So let's go to a course. Let's go to Architecture 253. So here I can pull in a rubric. I can duplicate an existing one, create a new one, and duplicate one means I'm essentially bringing it in from my global rubrics, which is kind of like a template. And then I can modify it a little bit if I've got those permissions. So duplicate an existing one from global, or if I have access to another course, then I can pull a rubric in from another course that maybe was created there and not on the global side. It just depends on how strict you're going to be. Is everything going to come from the global rubrics, or are you going to be kind of making them up just course by course by course? Just to help you understand this, I've had schools tell me that, oh, we have a lot of adjunct faculty, and we really would like rubrics at kind of a global level so that they can come in and just walk in and be able to grade things according to how we grade things here. Because maybe they're not going to be here long enough to really develop their own style or, you know, get used to how we do things. It'll just be easier for them to come in. Or it might be all your faculty are very unique and feel like mentors, and that's one of the reasons people come to your school is because they want to interact with those particular faculty. So your faculty have a lot of leeway and they just create their own rubrics and create their own ways because it's sort of a more unique experience that you want your students to have. Those would be the two reasons why you might go global versus at the course level. Let's instead, and so if I had the ability, I have this turned on, then I could create a new rubric here. Let's pull for my global one, and I've got choices down here, and I can choose them. I've got the description right here if I want to see it. I know there's 3 criteria, gives me a little bit of information, and we'll go ahead and save that. So here it is. And now I can edit it here. So this course instance can have just a slightly different version than my global template. Go back to rubrics, I can see that here. I can add another one, and so on. I can even duplicate the one I just pulled from Architecture 253, Fall 2013. I have to rename it though, because it can't be the same name in the same place. Now that I've got my rubric here in my course, and if you've already watched the video on how to set up your assignments, then you just need to pull in one of your assignments. And I can add rubrics to every assignment type except for the test types, because a lot of those are going to be auto-graded by Populi, so it doesn't really make sense for you to do the rubric thing there. And attendance, because attendance is also an auto-grade. It just grades the assignment according to the attendance percentage. So if you have 80% in your attendance, then you're going to get 80% on this assignment. So because those are already automatic, then those you can't add a rubric to, but everything else you can. And you just choose it, whatever that type is as you're setting it up, and then choose the rubric you want to bring in. Let's go ahead and add one to this. We've got class project. Now notice without a rubric, I can just enter grades right here. There's nothing else to enter grades. There's no rubric to enter grades into. I can click on a student's name and enter grades for that particular student, just give them a number. Or I can add the rubric. Since this is already existing, I'm just going to edit my information here and pull in the rubric, composition, and hit save. And we'll go ahead and refresh. And so now if I enter grades, I'm given this little symbol here, edit rubric scores. I can still just do the old school single number, or I can grab the rubric score and put in numbers for each section. Because the total points for this assignment is 100, then 35 is going to go here, 35 is going to go here, and 30 is going to go here. Because that's how we broke it up. Our weights were 35%, 35%, 30%. And then remember how I have percentages in these different ranges? Well, these are going to break down that 35 points into those percentage ranges. I can just click on one of these boxes. If I do that, then Populi will give the highest number for that box. So 35, 31.15, and 30. Or instead of clicking, I can just type in a number and Populi will figure out which box to highlight, even though I'm just somewhere in that range. I can also give a comment here that I can look at later when I'm writing up information for the grade report. We'll do this one at 34. So something like that. We got a good here, excellent here, good here, but I actually spelled it out and gave him more specifics. Actually, we could even say, let's say this is a 28. So his total points are going to be 87, added up, but he can see kind of where he lands. Simon student can see where he lands on those different levels. And we can save that. we save that, puts in the number right here. I can just override that if I want. I can also do the same thing if I click on Simon's name and I hit enter grades. That little rubric box will show up here too. And then that will get pushed over to the transcript. So if we go to class project, here's that 87. When the student logs in, they're not going to, when they click on their assignments, they'll pretty much see, or they will see, just their grade number, and they'll be able to click on their rubric and see what it looks like, but it's not going to be editable. They'll just see these point numbers. They'll see it exactly like this. And that's why some of this text might be helpful, is because they'll be able to read out, okay, my ideas and interaction presented with competence, whereas I could have been a little more organized thoughts, interact with the sources a little better, but did pretty good in these two. So the student will see this also. All right, that is rubrics. Set aside a whole hour, but maybe we don't need it. But you guys can go ahead and fire away with questions if you have them. Cheryl says she came in a little late, wants to know if she can watch this again. Yes, Cheryl, we record all of these. They'll get put on our YouTube channel. We also put them in our support site. So you'll be able to track those down. If you can't, you can always shoot a note to support and say, you know, where's that recording for the rubric training? Because you registered, you might get sent an email about it. But I'm not sure. Anonymous asks, is the description the same as the criteria? No. So the descriptions are in different places. So I have a description for the rubric itself. Evaluates thought, structure, presentation, and grammar of student writing. That's for the composition overall, like what this, for the rubric overall, what this rubric does. And then each criterion has its own description. If I want to use it, or I don't have to. Let me go back to my global settings, and I might not be able to edit all these. So because it's already used and a student has been graded on it, I can't edit them unless I create a copy of it and start over. But here's a description for the criteria, but I don't have to use it, it's just optional. So no description, or just sort of a tool that helps you describe the rubric itself. Rubrics have descriptions, and also criteria have descriptions. You're welcome, Cheryl. Jennifer says, can you repeat where it is again that the academic admin can give professors the ability to set up their own rubrics? Yes. If you go to academics and then under settings and then under general, there's a big old pile of settings that you can do all kinds of stuff with. And the one for rubrics is down here at the bottom. Allow faculty to create rubric criteria. We give you some text here if you want to read a little more details on what it actually means and what it does. But you've got a yes or a no. Make sure you hit save settings before you leave, although I think your browser will probably notify you and say, are you sure you want to leave? You haven't saved your settings. But the save button's way up here, so make sure you hit that. Sometimes people don't see it. An anonymous attendee says, do you type the assignments or the rubrics first? You need to first create your rubric, and you can do that at the global level here, or you can do it at the course level if that's allowed. If you've done it at the global level, you need to bring that rubric in by adding a rubric and duplicating an existing rubric from your global rubrics. And once you've brought that rubric into the course itself, then you can go into an assignment either as you're creating the assignment the very first time and add a rubric to it, or if you already have an assignment created, you can click on it and hit edit on this little info side and add a rubric to it. By the way, we give you little warnings here and there. We've already graded a student with this, so if you change or remove it, it's going to mess with their rubric scores, but we'll hang on to that assignment grade for you. Just give you those little warnings here and there. Claire says, you cautioned us about not modifying the global rubric. Just to answer a comment on that real quick. The handy thing about a global rubric is that it is a template. So then you can pull it into other areas. So if you're always tweaking it, then it's going to not be as helpful because it's not this universal template. And the only caution I'm giving is the caution that Populi already gives. And that is, if it's already been used to grade a student submission, it can't be edited anymore. So it's not like I'm cautioning you to do it because you shouldn't do it. You just can't. You can't change a criterion if it's already been used in a rubric somewhere, because that will screw up a grade that's already been given. If you don't want to use this anymore, you can retire it. If you want to make a new criteria based on this one, you can create a copy, and then from that point on, use that criteria instead of the old one and keep the old one historic. The second part to Claire's question is when we import the global rubric into our individual course, our modifications will not affect the global rubric. Is this correct? That is correct. When you add it to a course, you're essentially copying it from what I might call a template from the global template. And then if I decide to edit something here, I won't be editing the template. I'll just be editing what's in this course. And again, I can't edit it if I've already graded a student, already used it to grade a student. But before I used it to grade some student submissions, or if I took away that grade, then I would be able to edit the criteria here, but that wouldn't affect the global rubric. Gwen says, is there a way to find a listing of all the global rubrics in other categories of rubrics? You might need to flesh that question out a little bit, Gwen. I'm not sure if I fully understand, but I'll try. If you want to see a list of your global rubrics, you can see those here. If you want to see your list of criteria, you can see those here. If you're asking, how do I know where they are? Like, are they stuck inside a course somewhere or whatever? And how do I know what courses are using all these rubrics? One thing you can do is, this sort of a workaround, I guess, is you can, let's see, add a rubric, and I can say duplicate existing, and then look at my from list. This is anywhere I want to add a rubric, I can duplicate existing, look at my from, and I'll have a list of all the courses that currently have rubrics in them. And if I click on the name, I'll be able to see which term it's associated with and which rubrics are there. So if that's kind of what you're trying to do, that's sort of a workaround to get to where my rubrics might be living if I want to go in and delete them all or something. If it's a real big mess and you want to start over or something like that, someone in the past tried it and they did it all wrong and they weren't setting up properly, and now you've taken their job, or maybe you did it all wrong and now you've learned how to do it, whatever. If it's that kind of situation and you really don't know how to untangle it, you can either kind of just go from now forward and make sure you're doing it right from now forward, or you can reach out to our support team and see if they can go on the past and mess around with some stuff for you. We'd probably be a little bit careful about going in the past and messing around with historic data, just in case there's grades tied to that, because that could affect transcript and have bigger ramifications. hopefully I answered your question, Gwen. Yes, Gwen says thanks, so you're welcome. I'm glad that I at least got close to it. Jennifer says thanks. You're welcome, Jennifer. Anonymous says, can you remove a rubric from an assignment after it's already been made? Yeah. So if I go into this assignment and click edit, then I can, remember I have a warning here. It says this has already been used to score student assignments. If I change it or remove it, it will remove the rubric scores, but the assignment grade will not be affected. So what that means, let me point it out and then we'll go do it. What that means is right down here, we have a grade percentage and that will be unaffected. We also have a rubric percentage and the 25, 34, and 28, those will be gone because the rubric will be gone. So let me show you how that works. I move this down to nothing. So those little dashes mean it's gone. I hit save, rubric's gone. Try enter grades, no rubric to click on. But Populi did keep the 87, assuming that you still wanted that to show up on the grade book and eventually get onto, eventually contribute to the transcript. Any other questions? Well, it was a good spending time with you all. And I already said this once, but it doesn't hurt. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. And hope you'll have good holidays coming up. Merry Christmas. Holiday break for your school. Wishing you all the best. I don't think we'll have any more of these group trainings this year. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll squeeze one in. We'll see. I'll have to look at my calendar. But keep an eye on the next ones as they come up. And keep an eye on our YouTube channel if you want to dig in. By the way, we've been throwing videos on our YouTube channel that that haven't been group trainings, which we've just been throwing up short ones. And some of them are even client interviews if you want to check those out. So subscribe to our YouTube channel and take care, everybody. All right, bye now.